Let's say we put
I don't even care what we put in it, I mean,
Even if
because
it's
it's
vacated.
9-12 money into
Right.
the state, and it's K-8 money, whatever we end up putting in it.
we vac-
Heck, we sell it, whatever.
Yeah.
How long until the state takes that out of the 9-12 equation?
Need to look at it, but it looks like, you can remove it from your inventory by resolution. And like you'd mentioned, the 5-year rule where it comes off your inventory, but it, states it was, let's see if they're considering that. Improved space. So they're showing that 9,270 square feet of that facility was improved space. So they're recognizing that you improved that. It was built in 70, but purchased in 2012 and then remodeled and board accepted in 2013. So if it's improved space and funded by, they're still gonna consider that new. You just can't take it off, or you can remove it, but it was OSBI funded. What do anyone recall, in 13? That was just done in small in-house project.
Yeah, I think that was all local dollars.
Yeah.
Or
Well, there's-
from that $26 million bond, the original bond, and matching funds, I think. I don't know if it was, designate local dollar. It wouldn't have had matching funds for it though, I don't think.
Doesn't look like it. but- So 5 years, you could probably get it off your inventory.
Okay. Because if it took us 4 years to build, basically, then we tried to take it off, by the time that the 9 years is up for the new modernization, if we're not over capacity then, and that, you said 9,000 square feet drops off, we could have like a perfect storm happening in 9 years, that we're out of capacity again, and we have a modernization eligible thing, maybe, or it could totally bite us in the butt.
No, I agree.
Also shows another 5,500 square feet on that campus, or,
So there's two buildings, there's the gym and then the classrooms, so there's 5,000 for probably the gym,
Mhm.
9,000-ish for classroom space, so we're talking more like 14 to 15,000.
right?
Does it show the gym as
5,500
nine,
square,
12 space?
yes.
Hmm.
Although it, how does it state it, 9,270 used for the high school and the rest for the district, that's the way OSBI put it, so,
Because it started out as a district conference center, and now they use it, some portion of it,
The
but,
district uses it still.
yes, they do. There's a lot of district stuff in that space.
would you abandon it completely, because? No?
Why would we ever ban anything completely?
Well-
I'm sure we'd stick something else there.
Well,
Or
if you
over
showed,
capacity everywhere.
yeah, so if you showed growth within the district and a need, sometimes you can do what they call it's kind of a gray area, but the one-time grade reconfiguration. So if you had a need on both the 912 and the K8, you might be able to unhouse that square footage and put it towards a project and convert it to K8, if you could sell why, the reasoning behind that. But when you try and find that, I've done it a couple of times where districts had rapid growth, or they were, like your situation, they would consider that a housing emergency at the high school currently, because per OSPI, and, you know, they don't usually cheat to the right, you're 65,000, or near 65, well, less the 600 wing, you're underhoused at the high school by 65,000 less the 600 wing, which is about 12, so 50.
Okay. So maybe we could transfer it into something else, is what I just heard you say.
If that was a
A
mall, yeah, we could-
one-time transfer.
yeah. The other, we discussed that previously with the high school, because the high school is such a condensed site, and you bought all that new property. There was the idea that potentially a grade reconfiguration with the existing high school campus to a K-8 and then build a new high school. That wasn't a viable option, because creating 200,000 square feet of new high school is well beyond your bonding capacity.
Okay.
So that's where it went back to the one campus, and knowing that you could put athletic fields at the new property and still have it available for a new K-8 or at some point down the road, but that nature, but anyway, my point was that you're already showing, in a sense, a housing emergency at the 912 level. So,
Other questions for Dax? Janelle?
Now we get to continue talking about mine. So I had Mark Pressing from ESD 112 and their financial advisory services group come up with some slides for some options and funding for us. This is just some general goals, meet the capital projects needs while also meeting the taxpayer expectations, promoting future tax rate stability as well, and then providing room in the tax rate structure for future funding needs. So these are some of the key inputs that we utilized. So we utilized a spring 2021 election date just to give some room for that. So basically what that would mean is if the bond is passed in the spring of 2021, collections wouldn't start until 2022. So the taxpayers wouldn't start paying until the next tax year. But if we ran a bond, the district would be able to collect the funds probably by the summer of 2021.
If it was a bond.
If it was a bond, yeah, we would be able to sell those bonds once it's passed. So we did a few different options. We ran a capital levy authority for $20 million. We also ran 4 different bond options. We ran a 20, a 30, a 40, and a 50 million. The 20 and 30 are on a 21-year term, and then the 40 and 50 are on a 25-year term. So basically we would be paying those back over those terms. Also built in is some assessed value growth, and the bonds being sold in multiple series to meet the construction cash flow, so we wouldn't be selling them all at once, we would do them in multiple phases. Also bond interest rates, obviously, and based on the current rates, and then payments being structured to keep that level tax projection. So that's something that's really important when you're looking at passing a bond.
So if you were to sell the bonds in multiple phases, let's say 10 million right off the bat, and then waited 3 years to do the next 10 million, if we were to do $20 million whatever, $20 million bond, how does that work on the 21-year maximum term thing?
So the term applies to the sale of the bond. So if you sell 20 million or 10 million at a time, then the 21 years would start from that time, and then if you sold another 10 million, then you would have another 21 years after that one.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes.
So it's from when you sell the bonds.
Okay.
Um,
But could you change that number according to making them want to drop off at the same time, I guess?
You can change it. The thing that affects is basically the amount of our payments each month, or not each month, but each year. And so that's gonna affect the tax rate.
Collection rate.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
so
if
that might
we've
put a
been
spike in it.
approved for a $20 million bond and they start collecting for a $20 million bond, even if we haven't sold the $20 million bond,
Mhm.
then why would that change the collection rate?
So the way it works is we don't certify a collection rate at the time that we're doing the election. So we what the voters pass is a bond amount.
Okay,
So like with the M&O, like we just did, right? We certified a total dollar amount, but that was based on a dollar per thousand rate, right? In bond world, that dollar per thousand rate doesn't exist, really.
So
we
when-
have estimates,
okay,
but because you're looking at such a long term, there's not anything hard and fast. We look at it as on a year-to-year basis, and we look at, okay, what have assessed values done? What are we projecting? How much cash do we have in the bank from the prior collections, net the prior payments? So we really look at that on an annual basis. But when they're projecting out and they're doing these projections for us, their goal is that consistent tax rate for the taxpayers.
okay.
When you define your bond scope and develop the budget, so if it was the high school, I'll put together a detailed cash flow across all the project activities, and then that helps structure how to optimally,
When we need to sell bonds.
when you need to sell them cash flow wise, and
Okay.
sometimes it's optimal to sell it. If you have a low rate, sell them up front. If you were just doing the high school, you would, you have a good faith spend down of 85% within 3 years. That's another restriction. Although, if you prove that's your intent, you can show it in the schedule. And Jim McNeil,
Mhm.
yeah, he requires this little package that I love to produce that to prove good faith that that is your intent. The ironic thing is there's no penalty if you don't. But at the time of the sale, it's
Pretty serious thing.
yeah, pretty serious thing, so, but the more detailed of a schedule and the more detailed of a cash flow model, cause you also have to show everything from projected interest earnings in it and your revenue stream of your state dollars coming back to you. So you see that whole cycle through the completion of the project. So with that, you can be pretty strategic about when and how you break it up and structure it. And as stated initially, it's your best guess of what the tax rate will be, but you don't know until you actually.
Yeah. The other thing with selling in multiple phases is now you're incurring multiple bond sale fees because people don't do that process for free. So you're looking at those stacking up as well.
Okay.
So I guess do we have any interest in reviewing the capital levy at this point?
Always,
Okay. You're not gonna like it, but okay.
I looked at it.
So this is a summary of the results basically. So a capital levy, we have a maximum of a 6-year term. So just in the 2021, if we pass in 2021, collections would start in 2022. So if you look at those red boxes in the capital levy column, right underneath those red boxes, you see a projected change of $2.06 So that would be what the tax rate increase would be for a $20 million capital levy over 6 years. And so that's, yeah, collecting the 20 million over the 6 years. So that's a, like, smaller cash flow each year. And then looking at the $20 million bond option, you're looking at a 74 cent tax rate increase, just based on the projections. $30 million would be $1.01. $40 million would be $1.06, and $50 million would be $1.45 per thousand.
So such a small change between the 30 million and the 40 million because of the term, changing from the 21 to
Yes.
the 25 years. That's
Yes.
what is the big key factor there.
Yes.
Okay? So when you say 2.06 and 1.1, 1.1 to what?
Dollars per thousand
Okay,
of assessed value.
because then you use the other examples below and I wasn't.
Yeah,
Sticking
that's
those
just
together.
an example of if a home was valued at $200,000, then that would be the projected cost per year for those measures. So there's a lot of other slides that kind of break that down further, that break down like projected tax rates in graphs and really tiny spreadsheets. But basically that slide with the summary of the results. So this is what the cash flow would look like basically on the bond project, or on the bond side, so the debt side. So all of that's provided to you guys as well, but that summary is really that kind of bare bones of what you guys were wanting to know, what the cost to the taxpayer would be.
Thank you.
And then decisions and next steps to work through. So a lot of it's what Dax was saying, of finalizing your project scope, engaging an architect, developing more detailed cash flows, working with bond council, community outreach, all that good stuff.
So because so many people are getting their property taxes right now, from 2018 to 2019, it went down by over $1 per thousand. But we're still getting the same amount because of the change in the levy that the state did, in essence.
So, I guess what are you looking at? Are you looking at a slide, or are you just talking in general?
Well, pretty much all of the slides show the 4.22 change to 3.15.
Yes.
Change of $1.
Yes, that
But
was
because the way,
the state law change.
yes, but also because of the state law and because of the kind of community that we live in, we're still getting the same amount because the state's giving us more and we're paying less.
Locally, you're talking about the local M&O levy,
Yeah.
right?
Yes,
Yes.
and now EP&O levy, right.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions for Jeanette?
No, not for me.
No, Mike, that concludes the district's portion of the presentation.
Okay, well, I am gonna ask one question, just because I'm dreaming big here and thinking totally outside the box. I'm gonna go back to, I think it's the 91,000 square foot proposal or whatever we have here. And if I'm at the top, I'm looking at 65,913 square feet, total cost of approximately $24 million. And then there's a new construction excess, whatever, there's another 9 million plus there with some escalation costs or what have you. And then I go back to the $50 million bond and the projected rates. Could a bond include 25 million for the 66,000 square foot portion at the high school. And if we acquired land, a 28 to 30 million pre-K 6 school. And this is the question's for the board. I mean, is that something that we would be interested in, or anyway, are those things possible? Could those things be,
If you took a target $50 million bond measure
I'm kinda wanted to start, okay, choose 50 million per se. I mean, we're dreaming here.
based on
Yeah,
doing 65,
uh-huh.
Mhm.
And then
so if
taking the
you're-
rest of that money, if we were able to purchase land and build,
26 million to.
and build a pre-K 6. I'm dreaming.
26 million to build a pre-K 6, I think is gonna be a little tight.
I thought we were like at 28 to 30 or something, I thought.
How much does that cost to build a current regular size K6, even K5? What do wahitas cost?
I think some of the most current one is in Tri-Cities. It's 28 classrooms for right around 27, 28 million, maybe, pretty close.
Probably, did that include a land acquiring and
No.
running utilities and
No.
all of that fun stuff?
We have models though, I mean, in Richland alone, we've done 7 new elementaries, so we have a pretty good idea what, but I was just looking at it, so if you had, let's assume you end up with 25 million attributed and you're just maximizing your 912,
Mhm.
so 25 million in local, so what,
And we could capture the entire 13.4 of the state match just with that 66,000 square foot portion of it, right?
right?
Okay,
Yeah, whether you do the 91
Yeah.
or the 65, you're gonna, for the most part, get that 15 million and change. There's only, the 65 is 15.6, almost 15.7 million. The 91 is slightly larger for, it's the same model, it's the same eligibility, but when you build a larger facility, the state matches, construction testing services and a couple other items based on actuals. So the testing services is higher for a 91, so you're getting match on that, so that increases the state match. And there's other categories where they base it on total square foot versus eligible square foot. So that's why you have 15.8 for the 91 and 15.7, so.
and I guess
So
that was,
yes, you're maximizing it at 65,
okay,
and so if you took 25 million in local, what could you do with that? And if you did, you could do about 50,000 square feet potentially, new facility.
what was the one that we had, how many square feet was it, the one that we looked at to put out there? I know we had a number that was like between 28 and 32 or something.
The original bond? Or
No,
the
this-
15 bond?
Oh, the rough amount that we were.
The rough
looking
amount
at.
for a new pre-K out there
Yeah,
at
with
80 acres.
Yeah, with utilities and stuff, I think, yeah, we were throwing around 28 to 32.
That's probably a higher square footage, so.
Yeah, we were looking at like a Wahidas plus another wing.
60.
Yeah, plus a pre-K wing.
Well, if we were able to build a school within a school at the high school, and the DOHS opened up and we could put pre-K in DOHS, and then reduce the size of our elementary school to where we could just copy Wahidas, copy that same square footage, and didn't have to add the extra square footage for a preschool program. A, is that feasible for the preschool and the growth that we anticipate for the preschool program? And B, is that something we could, like Mike said, if we shot big and went for a $50 million bond, could we build Wahidas 2.0 and do the 65,000 square foot remodel at the high school? I know that's a lot, all at once.
And then turn Desert Oasis into preschool.
And then turn Desert Oasis into the preschool.
Sure.
Things are driven big with us, Dax.
It's all about the options that you wanna put
What
in.
you'd wanna do is maximize the high school eligibility and phase the projects, you know, be designed, and when you're, because you end up in a cash flow, situation where that would be optimal, cause you could likely, if you had a $50 million bond, you could front fund the high school, so then you could bid it. You wouldn't be dependent on the release of the state matching funds, you could wait until that cycle, otherwise you're waiting until July of the year
Yeah.
you're eligible for that money to come back to you, so,
So we pay for it all with bond funds,
right.
and then we would do the reimbursement process once, cause there's a very driven process with that, they only do application approvals certain months in
July.
July.
A certain month, got
End
it.
of
loud and
July,
clear.
every year they go through the list, and historically, they fund most all the projects, well, they have for many years, but
As long as there's a capital budget.
yeah, there was one anomaly there that I don't think they
I don't think
really
we'll do that
understood
again.
the impact of that,
I
but
think we'll do that again.
Well, this is our discussion time here, guys.
Yeah.
Can I get thoughts of where we're at based on what we've seen? And these are just thoughts, I realize at this time. Everybody doesn't have to dream big like me.
The thoughts for me is I would like to see a $50 million bond. I would like to move forward with the high school and build a K-6. Those are my thoughts moving forward. If we can afford a pre-K-6, I would love that. If we
And not
can't,
because you were looking at my notes, right? No.
I can't even read your handwriting.
All right.
I would say this, and I
Is his
didn't
handwriting in Spanish?
quite get there, but if you did the high school first and you front funded it,
Yeah,
that gives you optimal bidding schedule and timing of that, because the optimal thing is to bid it early in the spring, come out of the ground as the weather goes, and that gives you a 16-month. If you start in July, then you're almost definitely a 2-year wrap, but my point is you could go through the design process with a pre-K 6, and depending on the market, if you just said, hey, we're gonna spend 50 million, you do a backwards budget, you do the high school, you maximize your state match, and then when you move to the elementary, you know, you're gonna build the core space for 65 to 70,000 square foot facility, and then you modulate back to what you can afford within the 50 million. So if it's 50, 55, it's pretty easy to develop alternates where you can expand and contract that facility within the dollars you have available.
so just so that I can be clear about what you're saying, you would build the core space to the size of school you want and then put on a wing as you can afford it, kind of,
Well,
of classrooms?
yeah, you'd have your initial project within the 50 million, do the high school, capture the state match, move to the elementary or K-6 project, and let's say conservatively, you're getting 50,000 square feet. Well, the core space, you know, the admin, the gyms, the commons, cafeteria, that takes up a certain size, and if you attempt to, you know, scale that back,
That makes no sense. That is
Right.
no vision.
it creates problems if you wanna add on to it. So
Right.
you focus on building a core space that would support, you know, a student population that's larger than you're able to afford. So when you design the building, you have your classroom wings, but you likely have another master planned wing that you could go from 50 to 62 or 65,000 square feet already built into the plan that the core space will support, so,
You have that room for growth
Right.
if we get a big bubble or
right,
whatever,
so
And you have a provision for modular spaces.
yeah. Yes.
that too, you could be a module, you know, you can have,
Portables.
So when the
Portables.
preschool moves,
you know, hard-built classroom
Right.
in the master plan, and then you have,
Hook 'em up to a semi.
you know, portable pad locations if you just need to add a couple to keep yourself housed until such time that you could afford to do it, or OSBI funding or eligibility changes, and What I'm saying is you could do both.
Mhm.
It would just be a matter of modulating the second project back within the available funds.
Yeah.
And timing it and
and-
phasing it in.
And I could do a budget pretty quickly on what 50 million
Can get us.
can get you K-6 wise.
That's just me personally. That's where I'm at.
Well, it wouldn't be 50 million for the
Just
K
for the
50,000
6.
square foot.
No,
It would
no,
be
I'm
that.
saying, what a
What could
$50 million
$50 million get us, period?
bond would get you high school and K-6 wise?
Yes.
In terms of the two
Square
options for the high school size, I'm much more on the 65 square feet, 65,000, over the 91. I'd be concerned about overbuilding, burdening our taxpayers very highly over, and then possibly shooting ourselves in the foot when we can redo other space. I just see that as dangerous. I mean, we need a lot of stuff at the high school.
Right.
Like you said, we're in a crisis mode. But, I'm afraid if we go above and beyond, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot with the taxpayers. I mean, I'd love to have all of those things that originally was discussed,
Right.
but maybe we can still build some of those things and then leave space for, this will become, we need to have a master plan there. We've never had a master plan. It's always like we need extra 6 classrooms here, and we need extra classrooms there, and it's, we have this space here, let's just chunk it there. We need to have a long-range, 5-10 year plan in terms of maybe student body size and not years, so that we have built that in. We've never had that. That I've seen.
The 1950s master plan
The 1950
followed.
master plan was,
followed. Yeah, the original building was where the office is. That was the first building built, and the gym, and it had provision in there for the 600 wing, the senior hall, the VOAG was all on the original plan. And they intended to build those separate buildings, and they did.
and they kept building according
So
to the
we need to
1950s
be the
plan.
new 1950s. That's what we're.
Wow.
We need a
Oh,
2020
yes.
plan.
That's right.
Anything over 50 years is kind of dated.
50 years, huh?
Kidding me.
You must
All
only be
right.
49,
Come on.
Mac.
Yeah, we're only 70 years old now.
I'm glad I'm not dated. How about you?
That, my big concern is overtaxing the public, because they got the final say-so to this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
no matter how much, or how big we dream, I'd love to have that, but it ultimately goes back to what we could sell the public on. And I don't wanna see this crash right now, because it's gonna be 2-3 years down the road again. We're gonna be back at this table again, trying to figure out what to do. So, and we're in a crisis mode now for the high school. We need to have something solid that we could get the community behind and set. I think by going the big numbers ain't that first step right now. I'm with Jen on the 61,000 feet for the heights, and working on a master plan, and working with the public on that master plan. I'm really in favor of trying to get the public's feedback on what they think that the school system should look like too. We know the high school's first, but we also know that the elementary schools are just right there behind it too. And,
Jeanette, none of these, unless I don't see it, the projected tax rate slides, when does our current bond drop off?
It's the blue, the dark
Existing,
blue
okay, I'm sorry.
is the,
Yeah,
I didn't, you're
Yeah.
right, yes.
right.
so it's 2027.
So,
27
Ken,
years.
following along your ideas, if we did the $30 million bond and we jumped up to 4.25, then in 6 years, it drops to 290.
290, and then
And then do
we could
another,
start to work on
we could
the
do another
elementary.
bond, because that's really about the phase.
We could live
I'm
in
thinking
portables, I
that the
think, for
elementary,
another 4 to 5,
would
6
be
years if we
there.
had to, but it ain't that,
right,
it ain't the best thing, but for getting by with the.
and we need to get as
with
much
the public.
state match. I just think,
Optimize that.
right.
as much
And
as
I'm not
possible.
saying that that's exactly what I'm not saying that's my decision, but I'm saying, you know, if you followed that idea,
Yeah.
So we would say in 2027, then we were gonna revisit the idea of building an elementary school, so that would put us to 2030 before we.
no, if we revisited that in 2026,
Yes.
so that by 2028, we can say, we're just replacing
You,
and keeping at the
you
same
could
rate.
start to visit that 2 years
'Cause it's
before the
really
bond
like
drops
2 years
off and-
before.
and get ready for it.
Yeah, you would
So
want.
as soon as it drops off, that you're right there with another one to
Right,
follow.
because
you
we've
would
already
wanna run
dropped
an
off.
election 27.
Right, we've already dropped off from 2018 to 2019, and that's when we were trying to get that bond in there to replace that number, so that we kept, that was what was kept being said. It's just gonna keep your tax rate the same. There's been a big change, or maybe it was not increase it as much as would have increased it because of that state change. So,
Can you remind me again, how big was our bond last time? Do you know what the dollar amount was we were asking for?
the last ask that failed,
Yes.
No, 61. Still should be.
because
It
there's
was kind of a
65,000 square
two-stage.
feet.
It was a two-stage, because
Yeah,
we were
I was
gonna
gonna say.
maximize our first sale of the bonds. Then as we were able to collect more, I think it was another,
Yeah,
No,
you would have
I
to
can't
phase
remember.
it in, cause you were probably at your debt
Yeah.
capacity.
It was right around 63, 6,
61.4 million.
61.
Okay,
61
so,
million.
Yeah, 61.4.
Cause it was, half of that was waiting for this one to drop off.
Mhm.
You can sell more than you can, you can get more approved than you can sell because you can wait to sell.
Yeah.
And that's, I know part of that process,
Mhm.
but.
okay, so bear with me while I'm muddling through this.
It's a whole new world.
And then maybe I'm misunderstanding. 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, when we went to bond, we were not as in an emergency state as we are now, and we were asking for 61 million. Now we're in a worse emergency state, but 50 million's too much? Is that, did something happen between then and now that changed the situation of our district that I don't know about?
People,
Anybody?
honestly,
I'm asking
I
them.
think
Yeah,
it's
I can
people.
answer that.
And
I
assessed
don't,
values.
I don't know.
Dax maybe?
The previous bond, there was a focus on the K-8 on the new site, so building a new K-8 at 70,000 square feet and trying to address the high school needs, which were similar, you know, doing that 91,000 square foot addition at the high school. The two of those, there was no combination, or that model puts you over your bonding capacity at that point, so you were going to be delayed for an extended period of time waiting for your bonding capacity to be present to capture or sell those bonds to do the second project. So, I don't remember what the delay was, but it was 5 or 10 years,
Yeah,
it was
5,
an
probably
extended
to 10
period,
years.
so you were gonna do the first project and have approval to sell additional bonds, but my reservation with that was you're so far out, you know, you're trying to build a budget,
Yeah.
who knows what the marketplace is gonna be at that time, it was a push. So, this, you know, anything, you know, $50 million bond addressing the high school need, and as you were talking about, you know, you don't wanna overburden the taxpayers, so you know, the bonds I've been a part of, that if you focus on and ask the question, what is the need? You know, sometimes the want's there too and blended, but really need, and that's what most community members that are on the, you know, fence, whether to support or not, it's like, well, you need it for these reasons. The high school, it's pretty straightforward, and now you're seeing it evolve at the K-8 level too, but it's need, you know, what your need is, and,
I was
When
just
that
curious
bond
if
was
something had
put-
changed.
When that bond was put on the ballot, Mike is the only person that is still currently on the board. It came out the same time that I think Ken and I were on that ballot. So that vote was before Ken and I were on the board,
Okay.
and Sharon and Lindsay are even newer. So I think the change
Has been
is
the board.
us.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if something had been built, if something had been reconfigured, if something had been changed to make it to where our needs had changed versus what we were asking for. That was my question.
I don't know if you can answer this. Do most cities go to their, or school districts go to their debt capacity maximum, or do they leave themselves with,
Oh,
that concerns me is that
they'll
we have
usually leave
nothing to
some
fall back
for
on.
emergency
Yeah.
situations, but you do have what they call non-voted debt capacity, which is minimal, where you can actually acquire funds and through a non-voted debt, but it's the dollars that you can capture with that are maybe a couple million based on the valuation of the district. So,
That's really more like emergency,
yes.
you gotta have money now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, we
You
have to
can't
leave
wait.
ourselves with a little space there instead of going all the way.
What
Well,
is
that's
our
where
debt
doing the
capacity?
multiple, that's where doing the
Yes.
multiple sales or phasing the sales in is
to have
an
that,
advantage.
What is the debt capacity for Othello?
Right now, it's about 54 million.
And so it was 61 3 years ago?
It was not, so that's where the phase-in of the sales came in.
They would've waited to
Okay.
ask for more
Yeah.
until after this went off.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so they would have asked and
That's
gotten
what
approval
phase-in
from the
is.
public for the full, but as far as actually selling and incurring the debt, it would have been phased in.
So in
Okay.
terms of putting that $54 million into dollar amount per thousand, can you convert that number so that we can understand that?
Well, it'll be close to that 50. If we do 54 million, it'll be really close to that 50. It'll be a
So
little bit higher.
$50 million one.
close to $4.70 per thousand-ish.
Total tax rate, yes.
For 6 years, and then it drops back off.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the total including the operating levy.
Dr. Hurst pulled up in 2021, what was it?
I think it was, 54 million.
Yeah.
No,
21, I think
21, yeah, 21, what does it say?
58.
I think it's 58 million.
I don't know where I'm supposed to be looking for that answer.
The far left column, Jen, the far left column.
40, what year? What am I'm gonna pass this back to you.
It is 54
Yeah.
in 2020 in the projection.
And it's 58.8 in 2021.
Yeah, and
So-
as
so
assessed
if we
value
did
goes
take-
up, that
Right,
will
so
create
if we
stretch
took
too.
50, we would still have the cushion of $4 million in 2020 and $8 million in 2021, and that cushion would just continue to grow as time went on.
Yeah, as assessed
Right.
value grows and as we pay down the debts.
Can you tell us when, that thing that we keep looking at of the original bond
Mhm.
presentation, what meeting that was in, if we ever wanna go back and look at that?
Oh,
You
that was,
find
that was just on his computer, but I'll find it.
Okay. Cause we keep looking at that and it's,
We can send it to you.
would you slide those down that way?
As far as finding out what the public thinks, man, I've been asking everybody.
Right.
I don't have a conversation with people in the public without asking them, so I would say, as a challenge to the board, get out there and ask the people what they think. People who have kids in school, people who don't. People in every age bracket, every race, every religion, all over town. I've been having conversations with people who are my friends, people who are not my friends, people who are my parents' age, people who are my age, people who are younger than me. I've been having conversations with everybody I see in town about what they want for our community and what they want for our school district. So just from the conversations I've had, I'm comfortable with going big. And I felt like the parents at our OHS visit and the staff asked us the same thing. Like, your job as the board is to provide us with some facilities, and what are you doing to step up for that? And like I said to them, our community's gonna have to show up in a big way. And in a big way, I mean like $50 million big way.
And that's my concern. And I look at the levy as kind of a good indicator. We were only asking the public for $1.50.
Mm-hmm.
that just barely got by at 61%. Granted, we only needed 50%, but that's the same voting public that's going to be voting if you go out and ask them for a $50 million bond. Now you're asking them for $50 or $60 million. We just got by at 61% on the levy. We need a 60% for that bond.
Yeah,
So that's
Yeah,
the
no
same
doubt.
public.
no doubt.
And that, to me, that's kind of a good indicator. We got a lot of work to do
Yeah.
in
we do have
order
a
to
lot of
get
work to
that.
do.
I
No doubt.
think, not totally, but a very big part, and this is just my opinion, of a non-pass last time on this bond were the letter K-8 in our promotion.
I've heard that in my conversations too.
I had several people say that they would not be in favor of anything.
Mhm.
And although I know that wasn't the majority of people, but I think that had something to do with it.
I do too.
I also think, I agree with you, Lindsay, in the part where, whether we like it or not, part of our job, I think, we're gonna have to sell this, and we're gonna have to sell the need. And I don't think it's out of the realm right now to say that the remodel at the high school for the 66,000 square feet to maximize state match and a new pre-K or a K-6 or whatever is needed.
Yeah.
It's needed. It's not like, we aren't asking for a Cadillac that we're gonna use 10 years from now. I think if these facilities 2 years from now were in existence, they would be getting used.
Absolutely.
I really do. And it would help with overcrowding. You asked earlier when we were talking about portables, are they here to stay or whatever? Marcus built a house, new addition over there on Road 68. I wanna say it's Rosa something, STEM Elementary. Beautiful, 2-story, you come into it. But behind that, there's 6 portables.
Yeah.
You know, so portables, they're seen as, you know, taboo or what have you. But even in a new construction, because that school I don't think is 5 years old,
It's not.
it's got 6 portables in the back of it. You don't see them when you drive up to it. There's a nice big 2-story section, the playground, the new, you
So they
know.
didn't do it like we did at Wahitas and just stuck them right out there in front, let's just show everybody, there's
No,
portables
no,
here.
That just kind of came to my mind when you asked, you know, to me, that's part of the things I'm considering when I'm gonna decide if I'm gonna lease or buy. There's always gonna be a need for portables in this district, whether we like it or not, whether it's for construction. There's always gonna be a need for some. Maybe not 20 of them, like we have now, but there's always gonna be a need there. So, when I say dream big, it is a big ask, but I think if structured properly, if promoted properly, we could sell this need, because I think the need is there. I really don't think that we're trying to put the Cadillac one out there when we need the Nissan. I really don't think that's the case. And I think if we educate the community as to why we're asking for these things, I don't know, Ken, I'm not saying this is a fail-proof, but I really think that we need both of these scenarios. I mean, they're within the realm of possibility of asking. We've been challenged, you know, publicly.
Yeah.
We've been
Thankfully.
told, you know, give us something to vote on. So, although, you know, this is not a decision for tonight, but my opinion would be that I don't think this is a real big ask. Yes, it is the highest one of the 3 that we've looked at as possible scenarios. But at the 470 on the 50 million is less than what it was when we went out for the 61.4 million. It's less money. I heard things of, the only reason I didn't vote for that bond is because you put a 1,500 seat auditorium out there. That's not needed. Had that not been on there, I'd have voted. Maybe that's some of the things we look at when we're putting this together. I mean, there's a lot of variables that went into this, but as far as needing these spaces, I think we're there.
I do too.
You know, I feel you,
I know
Ken.
the need.
I feel you where it's a tough job and we need to be cognizant of, we're already asking our community for a lot of money. But if we want these things, and they say they do, some of them, I don't even want to say most of them, because, you know, most of them don't show up to our parent meetings or what have you, but the ones that do are saying this, and if we as a board, we as a district, do things the right way, and, you know, share the story of 100 kids leaving the assembly because they got nowhere to sit. You know, those things are gonna, they put us in a position where we don't have a choice but say, community, this is going on. We're not making this stuff up. So, as we're thinking about these things, you know, it's tough. Where's the line of trying to be cognizant of our taxpayers' funds, getting the most bang for the buck, addressing the needs at the same time, our community's gonna have to help us out here in a big way. So, it's not an easy decision,
60%,
but
50.
every meeting we have, we get more information.
Yeah.
Yes.
We get more stuff, but I think it's to the point, Jeanette, a bond resolution has to be in by for a November election?
August?
She suggested spring.
I would do it in the general
Okay.
election.
Yeah,
You don't wanna do it.
well,
Because that's a presidential
So-
election, it's a higher.
yeah, you're gonna get a mixed bag. You're gonna get more people to show up. You're gonna get more
Mhm, like-
voters, but you're also gonna get more people who are maybe not such a fan of taxes.
Depending on who's
So it's
actually.
kind of a
what
gamble.
Those that
Yeah,
show
the
up.
candidates for the president are
Yeah.
projecting
Yeah,
tax-wise too.
it's kind of a gamble, but I mean.
I
if you
thought
get
it
the
was,
tax-
I heard that was the best time to run one. Statistically.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
That
it is the best statistically, cause you get that higher voter turnout. You get, I mean, people are gonna vote. That's the draw. You don't have to work
I
as
might-
hard
I
on
wouldn't
that.
mind
So I
going
think
for
what we
big,
need to know.
But if we did go for big, I would have to have Plan B right behind it, because if it didn't go through,
Absolutely.
we don't
can
have
run
another
right
2 to
spring.
3 years
We
to
don't.
kick the can
No,
down
we
the road.
don't.
Right, and that's what we've
We gotta have
done.
something immediately behind
That's
it.
what we've
Yeah.
taken, right. So I think that we need to know when we have to have a decision made
It's gonna be
for the
early
November
August.
election,
Early August.
August the 4th.
okay, and then the
Okay.
spring. The
Spring
spring
would-
dates as well.
Do you mean February?
I mean, the
Election?
spring dates, multiple dates,
Okay.
options in
So
spring.
February election would be the November.
Yep.
April election would be February.
Okay.
So
I think-
August, November, February.
I think we as a board need to possibly consider whether we decide to go for 50 or not, maybe still in our process of our decisions, is maybe we need to have a community facility. What are your thoughts? What are, the board runs, an open dialogue? Maybe we throw a few things up and we just talk about, here's a couple of different options, what do you guys think? Tell us what you
I
think.
think our policies even kind of require that,
Right.
to have the public
Be
involved.
encouraged.
And so I think that we need to be ready at our next meeting to be able to put together some dates so that we're getting a better feel.
Good,
Whether we
I
go
thought you wanted a plan by Monday, I'm like.
Oh, no. I'm not ready to do anything until the cranes are gone, I can tell you that right now. Please do not give me another meeting, until after that is gone. Just so that we can have, like, a plan, like,
Yeah.
a go forward.
I
with.
agree, I
Because
agree.
we still have a lot of smaller decisions that we need to be making
Sure.
before we even go to this, if we're doing a facility discussion, a community facility discussion. We still have lots.
Yeah.
Portables, we still have transportation, parking lot, we still have, I mean, I'm sure there's like another
There's several
10
there.
decisions before we even get to.
Well, and you need to
Storage,
build
Yes.
in that PR sell it time, because
Yeah. Yes.
it's a big push. You're
Yeah, you
gonna
have
have
to
to.
remember last time it was a
Form
great
bond
plan.
committee.
Yeah, bond
But
committee.
we didn't have the yes campaign, absolutely right, Mike.
we did have like specific times of when
Yeah.
stuff went out, flyers went out, meetings were at.
Yep.
Did you say you did have a yes
We
campaign?
did not.
Okay. So that was one thing
It
that a
was all-
community member said to me,
Mhm.
was they didn't feel like there was a committee that was getting the word out to the public where there was like a yes campaign.
Correct.
It was district fund.
Right. So a lot
We
of
couldn't do
community
that.
involvement is gonna be key in selling it to the community. But like Mike said, at least that's where I'm at, where I feel like we're not trying to sell the community on an auditorium or on things that are like an extra that would be amazing for our community, but that maybe we don't need. This $50 million is literally giving us our bare bones reconstruction at the high school and a new K-6, which we need bad. I mean, we're over capacity at every school, it's only gonna get worse. This is just our reality. So I don't have a problem trying to sell that to people, because I have people ask me, what are you going to do? What is your plan? How are you moving forward? And so when we're moving forward with the bare bones, unfortunately, this has been neglected, not to anyone's fault, but it's just been a situation that's been neglected or hasn't moved forward for so many years that now we're in emergency mode of, we have to do something.
We're 5 years behind.
We're 5 years behind schedule.
Well, they already had the 20-year plan, which is not even hardly looked at, I don't believe.
For the high school?
No, that included a high school and included, it was a 20-year plan. They had, that committee met for like 2 years. They were,
Well, out of that 20-year plan, I bet we're on like year 7 and
Probably.
we're still at day 1.
and we still had
Of
another
the plan.
facility committee that we haven't followed through with that either, so, yeah.
Time to drop the 1950 master plan and regroup.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dax.
He dusted it off.
And I totally think, I'm with you, Jen.
a lot of good notes on that.
We have to just use the maximum that we can get from the state funding
Mhm.
with the lowest amount to ask.
From the
What-
locals.
Yes, yes,
What-
or we'll
what
be
can we
shut
do,
down.
though?
Pardon me?
What do you think, okay, so our maximum amount that we can ask, that we get for state match is like 15 million. So then if we only ask for 20 million, that gives us like 35 million. That will give us one or the other.
This
We
one,
can-
the district cost would be, it's still gonna cost 23 million out of pocket.
Right, so if we only ask the community for 23 million, or 20 million, right, our options are 20, 30, 40, 50. If we only ask for 20, we will have to choose either an elementary school or the high school remodel. What would you be in
You
favor
can
of?
only use the 15 million for high school.
You could.
Oh, right,
yeah.
It's only the high
So
school.
you have to do the high school.
If you go lowest amount, you're only doing high school.
Right, so we won't have an elementary school until we run another bond in, if we run another bond in 3 years, then we're 3 years past that from stepping foot in it, so we're 6 years away from a new elementary school.
You're probably looking at
Although,
2024.
you could just say
High school.
we're going 100% local for a K-6
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, you could choose to do that.
and not do the high school. Just to say that, I'm not saying that's an option that I wanna discuss, but anyways, you said that, so,
So it would be one or the other essentially.
yes.
Either we ask for 30 million from the community and just build an elementary, or we ask for 20 million from the community and just remodel the high school with the state match, or we ask for 50 and shoot for gold.
By the time
You
that
guys
we're
can go
ready
above
to
50.
do, by the time that we're ready to do the elementary, I mean, we're talking a few years down the road. We're not gonna do both immediately.
Right.
We're only doing one. By the time that we're a few years down the road, we might be able to have a state match on the elementary by that time anyways because of the capacity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
But
true.
it's gonna take us a while, just find a piece of ground, then
Yeah,
get it shovel ready too.
That too.
yeah.
And
Well,
then
you wanna
that could be
target a
another
piece of
10
ground
million.
my preference would be to target a piece of ground before you commit to, we're gonna build 50,000 square feet of K-6. Because as you can see with like the property you have, to get infrastructure there was,
Well, that's not even an option anymore.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying the scenario
I
of.
prefaced my dream with if we had a piece of land.
Right,
Could I
But
share a
like-
couple comments?
yeah.
course. Help us, please.
I'm not sure it's gonna help, it might feel a little bit like a
You're gonna
pushback,
Make it.
but I think it's important to share the brief history. If the community had passed that bond and built a K-8, we wouldn't be here talking about these issues.
Right.
So I don't think it's fair to people who worked on this project really hard to say it was neglected.
I didn't mean to.
No, yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know, but,
Not
and it wasn't
you.
just you, but those people listen, and a lot of people worked hard on it that still work for us. And if it was program, if people didn't like K-8, and they didn't like that part of it, that would have solved our facility problems. We would be here talking about something else, the high school, right? And so I just don't think it's fair for people to hear that messaging.
I apologize to whoever's
So do I.
listening, that was not at all my intent,
Yeah.
and I sincerely, I apologize.
Yeah, no, and yeah.
I'm, you know, I've given kudos to everybody who's worked on something, but it was just comments that came to me.
Yeah.
It was commented by a few people, and those, if you're listening, community, and I apologize, that was not at all my intent.
I just want to make sure that those people know that you're all here thinking about it critically, and so were they.
Right,
They
right,
were working in much the same way.
yeah.
The other piece that I think is so important we hear from the community, but it's also so important that our teachers and principals hear that we're listening, because if you just did the high school project, OHS wins, MMS is right-sized right now, it's 7-8, but those K-6 folks need to know what's coming next. And if it's 6 years away, they just kind of need to know that. Can they prep and prepare for that? So whatever the message is, whatever you all decide, I think it's really important that we want to hear from the community, right? Absolutely, but we need to hear from the teachers and the principals.
Mhm.
They need to be part of the discussion as well, just so they can start to plan and do the hard jobs that they have. So I just don't want them to be left out of the conversation.
Definitely.
I think especially since they're already overloaded right now, the students. Totally.
Yeah, they certainly feel the pinch. When Dax talks about program, that's what we think about, right? Those are who we're talking to every day. And if we tell them it's gonna be 3 more years, those people are pretty resilient. They're pretty tough. They'll figure it out, right? But if we say it could be 3 or it could be 13, that's harder to sell to them,
Yeah.
right? To do an already tough job.
And there are taxpayers too.
And
A
three.
lot of them.
Some of them,
three
yes, you're
well,
right.
3 of the elementaries, so, excuse me, okay, 3 of the elementaries, their kitchens are too small and they don't have that second gym. So those PE teachers are they're stressed too. I mean,
Mhm.
and so it makes the whole entire schools. Yeah, that was the only thing is it's hard to pick. It's gonna be very hard. Very hard.
Yeah, that's why yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard
I
to
mean-
say just OHS wins or just K-6 wins when they both need the championship.
I mean, how did they
Good.
save so much money in years past to have built Wahidas with cash?
I'd let Dax answer that, but that has more to do with the way matching funds came down from the state rather, and
And
the way
the
our
enrollment
cohort
growth.
was, and enrollment and growth and age of buildings all played into that. It was just the right time to do it.
Because we don't seem to
The
see
way
that
it is.
Yeah,
growth.
when we passed that bond 10 years ago, and then had money left over to build Wahidas,
Yeah.
it
It was, we were able to set a pace with your growth in order where the original plan was still the $28.6 million bond, and the match was very low because it was being spread amongst the facilities, and the strategy when we came in was you focus on this school, you capture the state match, and you kind of see that with the high school. If you do the high school first, you're capturing that 15 million, and then you're rolling it in a sense. So if you pass a bond, let's just assume for the high school total project cost, and you generate that 15 million in state match, that rolled to the next project, which was also eligible, so that 15 million went into that and generated state match again. So it was all about the pace moving through those. So by the time we got to the end, we continually generated matching funds on each project in kind of a stair step. So in a sense, you're generating state match.
Because Wahidas wasn't the end of that money.
Right.
We did Desert Oasis, we did
Yeah,
6-pack at the high school, we did offices at the high school, we
the
did.
co-op.
And that was all
Yeah.
that cash flow that you.
It was all the cash flow that came, and we did new ORTC co-op, you know, I mean, it's just,
Yeah, depends on costs that come in and things like that.
Right.
You know,
But-
construction costs back then are not construction costs.
No.
I know that even from just the 4 years of not doing that,
Yeah,
a K-3 grant, it's gone extremely,
yeah.
so.
Like was mentioned previously, you know, if the high school goes first and the K-8 based or K-6 project by K-8 based eligibility grows, you know, you look at that pace, there is an opportunity to maybe capture eligibility. If there is, then, you know, you might be able to bolster the square footage of the K-6 if it's originally planned at 50. If you can do more square footage, you would take advantage of that. But
Do you guys remember what the last bond yes vote percentage was?
We barely missed it,
54.
54,
and we needed,
It's not
what,
that far.
60.
60.
60 plus one.
Nope, just
Just
60.
60?
Unless the legislature changes something.
no,
You never can tell that. what's gonna
Probably not
happen.
gonna happen. People have been trying for a while. But 60%, so only 6%.
So back to Pete, some of the things that you said, I think I wanna say, if we were to have a community facility discussion, it doesn't just need to be a discussion that we're like throwing a bunch of ideas out there for the community. We also need to have a staff and admin special section, I think, because their realities and needs are different as well. And, we need to get their buy-in. A lot of times their buy-in, I think, is the bigger key to a community buy-in.
Absolutely.
Because they talk.
Absolutely.
Friends, family, neighbors, their votes count.
If you have
way
staff
more than
support,
just one.
you're
But
It'll be way easier.
don't we have that request already? Isn't that the last committee we had, where we had, was comprised of teachers and every school had their wants?
Right, but I'm
There
saying if
was,
we
but-
went to and did a community forum
No,
or
I agree,
whatever,
I agree,
but
but
we
we-
need to have that.
We have had
component as well.
something to where their
Yes.
participation was there.
Right.
Mhm.
It was,
Yeah.
it was some
There-
But
comprised of-
are they thinking that we're still hearing them and that their list is what would be included in our bond?
I hear you.
And maybe they don't feel that way.
The last work that was done and the data that was collected was focused on sporadic work at each of the schools, adding space, you know, here, and here. So if you're going a different direction where you're building space to alleviate the overcrowding, it's just a different dynamic. So that's probably the way you wanna posture, is say, in lieu of trying to add space and put additional pressure on the core space of each of those facilities, the alternative idea is to build new K-6 space to alleviate the overcrowding in that manner, which is the more optimal strategy from my perspective, is to, and you are looking at probably a 2024 complete, if you passed a bond for the high school in November or late date February 2021, you're still probably conservatively looking at a 2024 occupancy fall.
For the high school.
Yeah, and then if you added a K-6 into that, just quickly looking at it, you would run probably a chase. So when you're done with the design of the high school and bid it, you'd launch into the K-6 design and try and bid it about a year later, as soon as you as soon as you get a funding release letter in the July year of your bid of the high school, look to bid the K-6. You know, you'd wanna bid the high school front funded early, you know, a year or so later. You know, that's a pretty accelerated pace, but could be done. And then the same with the K-6, so probably a 2024 for the high school, 2025 for the K-6. So that gives you kind of a perspective on when you would realize the relief, and
could be good on construction bids as well, potentially with contractors, just because if you have big projects going on already, they'll look more keenly and you might get some more competitive bids because you already have a contractor on site for another project.
right. And with the model, you'd have the opportunity to bid it early in the year and get through all your contracts, you know, submittals, start procurement, mobilize the site as the weather's getting turning, and that's optimal. So from my side, I could polish up the 65, I'll ignore the 91 for now, and try and look at the program that made up the 91, and look at pieces that would come out of that, like the auditorium and the square footage associated with that, and what the 65 translated or translates to based on the programming that was done many years ago. But I think it, you know, less specifics, it still applies, you know. So if it's a competition gym and locker rooms and classrooms and admin space and a relocation of where the admin would be, et cetera. And potentially need to look a little bit because there was, we laid it out, the addition in there, it's budgeted right now, straight up build new space. But the reality is you start to, you know, blend that with the existing building, there'll probably be some modernization, so probably some budget in there for that too, to at least complement and tie into the existing building, but avoid doing things within the building, knowing that that's gonna be eligible, you know, down the road and not too many years down, 2029, when that would need modernization and come back with that and say, well, here's what the program looks like. Does that seem appropriate? And then that's something you probably share with your teachers and staff at the high school and on the K-6 level where they're overcrowded. Take a look at, if you go backwards from 50 million, what does that translate to K-6 wise? And what kind of classrooms is that gonna generate? And what does that do across the K-6 schools, you know, for, you know, what will it translate to their relief, you know, space-wise? So that may be a good place to start, and sharing that with the community. I would try and keep it focused on that, and if it goes a different direction, you go that direction, but that's where, you know, the high school's where your eligibility is. It's a definite need, you know, you need to build that new space to house your students. The work we did previously, and I know the district did a tremendous amount of work, you know, looking at what needed to happen at those schools to keep them viable, even though it was pushing the core space in the last one. But a lot of that need was identified then. It's just, instead of being on multiple campuses, it would be on one. That makes sense. See what that looks like, and probably the next step. The only other anomaly, and I'm sorry I was late, but I missed the K-3 class reduction portion of it. I know you need to begin some sort of design process, whether it's modulars or portables or stick-built, but could someone give me just a quick, is that something that, if you're building new space, that's probably gonna need to be supported by bond, but that would probably bring your K-6 back to a point where it starts becoming not really a viable facility if you build the core space size to support.
Yeah, we would, the guidance from OSPI is just design phase, so very loose terms, but like, basically we need to be spending money, working towards what we're gonna be doing. And so if we're gonna phase it in, that's gonna kinda complicate things a little bit. I mean, we can do, like Greg was saying, we can do some of that work and start looking at architecture drawings and stuff like that, but we need to be steadfast. We can't like drag it on. We gotta keep
Could
trucking.
that money be used for land purchase for a K-6 school?
No, I don't believe
No.
so.
Okay, this would be for the
Literally
building
just
of,
like building the building. What it takes to build the building.
Somehow producing the 10 classrooms.
They want 10
Yes.
classrooms for the K-6.
And some,
K-3,
K3.
sorry, K-3.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time tonight. Jax, appreciate the information. Pete, Jeanette, district staff, thank you very much for the information. Board, great discussion. We still have a lot on our plate, but appreciate the time you guys, the time we took out tonight to do this. We will now have a recess. The board will go into an executive session for 30 minutes to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. 30 minutes, we'll take 2 or 3 minutes to go to the restroom, and we will reconvene in Chris's office. Thank you.